Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Stu and Marty podcast. We're excited to be back again with the aim of helping people to think and create for their world. G'day, Stu.
Marty, how you going?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. We're on to number 3. This is probably a bit of a miracle.
And how good's the feedback we've been getting for the other ones? Just the snips. It's been sensational. Thanks everyone for the feedback. It's been really useful and helped us put together some ideas, but we'd certainly like some more in the future ideas I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So quickly reflecting on the first 2 episodes, we covered being proactive versus reactive, and then followed up with how we build goals. So again, really valuable insights and feedback and like you said, has been excellent, which is great. So we do appreciate it. This episode dovetails really well into the first 2. It's set on how we grow our influence. It's a really critical skill, as we know, and really important part of everyday life for both personal and professional situations. Because I can tell you, as we all know, I've got a wild 4.5-year-old, so being able to influence him can be beneficial. But I'm pretty
sure good luck with that.
Influencing me, yeah, exactly. So it's slightly concerning, but it's a great topic, and I think we can do some really great things in it for sure.
I think one of the things I want to start off with, Marty, around the influence bit, though, is that sometimes we confuse talking with listening. I can have lots of words come out my mouth, but is the person that I'm communicating with actually hearing them? That's a good question. And not only are they hearing them, but are they actually letting them process inside that unconscious part of their brain that goes, what does this mean for me? What does that mean for me for change? How does that do things for me? And so the question you kind of start off with is a really cool one about the idea of influence is not that I control people, it's that I actually have them listen to me.
Yeah.
And for me, it's an important part of a thing called validation. So we validate the relationship. So I'm listening to you, you're listening to me. And because of that, I don't change you, but I can have you think about, maybe differently, the things that we've talked about.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we often talk about active listening. Listening to understand, not listening to answer.
Yeah.
And I guess if we're thinking about that from a communication point of view, as the speaker, if we influence well, then we're enabling the receiver to actively listen to what we're saying.
Yeah, that's perfectly right, mate. And the other bit is sometimes, actually often, all the time, take your choice, we have to lead the way, because if we don't validate that we're listening, we've got to stop people from going into their pattern.
Yep.
And one of the ways to do that is to become a really good listener. And that's a really good start to this conversation. Influence really becomes about listening. Yeah, it's a really good start.
Yeah, and I guess you somewhat answered the question. But why do we want to grow our influence?
Yeah. Well, it's a great start to the conversation. And for lots of us, you sit there and go, well, the simple question is, why would you want to talk to someone? So I'm going to talk to you. You're not going to listen. You're going to talk to me. I'm not going to listen. What's the point?
Yeah.
The idea of human communication was to give us information that allows us to build relationship or build knowledge or build skill. And so if you go right back to the fundamental cause of communication, it is about giving us information that allows us to change, improve, or grow the things that we do.
Yep.
And in the work that we do, part of our conversation is to give people information that allows them to grow or develop the skills that they have in their job, their role, or in their life, including our own, because it's a two-way street.
Yeah, of course.
You and I both know that half the time we're teaching is we're learning just as much as we're giving back out.
Yeah.
Actually, it's probably more for me, but that's just the way it needed to be, right? But it's a really important bit in the conversation is that communication, which becomes influential, is about giving people information that's advantageous to them.
Yeah.
Now, if we tie that back to our first conversation, how would I know it's advantageous to them? Because I know what their goals are.
Yep.
Or they know what their goals are. So when you listen to a conversation with me, the first thing you're going to start doing, you're going to start asking yourself a question inside your head is, how important is this information to me? How important is this information in what I'm going through? How important is this information to my goals or my aspiration or my focus or my stress?
Yeah.
And if you start giving people answers to their situation, then we get a completely different dynamic than you're just talking a whole bunch of stuff that sounds like you're interested in, but has no relevance or relatability to me.
Yeah, and you see that quite a bit with salespeople, just talking, and you can visibly see the disinterest from the receiver or the customer.
Yeah,
it's quite horrifying. And those champion salespeople are really aware of that, and they're really aware of what's going on. And we'll get into what they are doing and how they go about the influence. But let me tell you this. So you and I coach, train, we walk into a room quite often in a classroom environment to train and coach a whole bunch of people we've never met before. We don't know their backgrounds, don't know who they are, what they've done, how long they've been around. Let's say there's 15 people. So when you walk into a room of 15 people you've never met before, or you may have met one or two, it's kind of irrelevant. What do you do?
Yeah. Besides doing my makeup and my hair.
Yeah. That's not working for you. So maybe you should just go back to it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So step number one, and I know we talked about this in our earlier podcast, Marty. Number one thing is that I understand when I walk through the room, the safer those people feel, the more likely they are to participate. The safer they are, the more likely they are to communicate. The safer they are. So my number one goal is to make people feel safe.
Yep.
We know that the number one piece and part that goes on inside of your mammalian brain, your limbic system, is when I walk into a room, I'm looking for people who are like me.
Yeah.
So in this simple model, and we're going to put up these words, and this will go up onto our text later on. People who are like you will like you. People who are like you will listen to you. And if they like you and they listen to you, they'll be influenced by you.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
But in simple terms, I don't need to teach you this. In simple terms, your brain's hot-wired for this. When you walk into a room, your brain is naturally, unconsciously, and automatically driven to go, who is like me? Because same equals safe, different equals danger. And the simple way you will ever know this, and how I got taught this, was the first thing was that when I walk into a room, if I start using derogatory terms to describe someone else, I'm dissociating. If I use, they look like nice people, they look like happy people. If I use positive words around it, that tells me my brain is I'm moving towards them and I'm pushing away from those other people.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because sadly as humans, we judge crazy. I know there was some research out of Princeton quite a while ago about how quickly we judge someone by the look of their face. And it was in the 10th of a second. Yeah. So it's the same thing. And I always say to people, just smile. That's the first thing you need to do is smile. And I really like what you do when you walk into a room. One of the first things I always do is, and generally you get there early, or there's only a few people there, not the whole class. And I always ask the question, who here loves role plays? And you see them shrink away, or kind of a bit of a non-event for them. And straight away you get an idea of where they're sitting and what they're doing, because a lot of people are terrified of them.
Yeah.
Some people are okay with them. So yeah, I like that approach.
The other one, and there's a secondary conversation, we've talked about this conversation about success and failure leave clues. And I'm going back into the late 90s. I was working for a client. We're doing large group work. We're working with groups of 60 people at a time.
Wow.
And I'm doing the stand-up facilitation, and the camera's on, taking everything in. And we finish the night, and Martin, who was the lead facilitator for the program, comes up to me, goes, so we talked a little bit about it. He goes, I want to show you a couple of things, Stu, before we get too far away from what we've done tonight, because we've had a great night, but I want to give you some specific feedback. And he rolls the camera right back to the beginning of the course. And I'm going around doing meeting and greeting. You and I both know, and we'll talk about this in a little minute, I'm a fast-paced emotional, fast-paced rational. In DISC, I'm a DI.
Yep.
So high energy, high enthusiasm, directness, almost sometimes forceful, can be a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
And I've gone around this room doing a meet and greet, and I walk up to them, I'm about this far away from everyone's nose. I'm grabbing their hand. I'm doing a big squeeze. I'm going, "Good day, mate. How you going? Good to see you." Slapping people on the back. And for about half the audience that I met about 20 people while the camera's on me. Yeah. About half of them are going, yeah, good.
They're okay with that.
But there's a bunch of people, about 10 of them, you could just see them recoil. And what Martin said to me that night, and it's stuck with me ever since, because I know you and I have had this conversation lots. He goes, you're going to have one shot at this, buddy. You've got 2 to 20 seconds to get it right. And he goes, I love your energy, but does the person you're meeting love that energy? Is that what they want?
Yeah.
And so what I did after that, and what I continually do today, so when I walk into a group, I make a conscious decision to go and meet everyone, but I evaluate on the way. I look at the way they stand, the way they move. And so I start modifying my behavior to that person. So when I meet them, if they jump up and move towards me quickly, they're going to get that same thing. So I'm consciously and deliberately modifying my behavior. So when I do a meet and greet, and I'm going to make a mental note of everyone in the room, and I'm going to be thinking them in terms of profile.
Okay. So you're sort of picturing them going, okay, where are they sitting on the model? Which we'll talk about the model in just a moment, but where are they sitting? How can I be most effective with them? The more effective you are, the more influential you can be.
Correct.
Like our role is to influence people to help them be better at what they currently do.
Yeah. And so if I want to give them information that they're going to listen to, I have to amend and change me.
Yeah.
The first rule of emotional intelligence is be aware. Well, what do I need to be aware of? Well, how am I feeling? How are my stresses driving me? What kind of behavior am I exhibiting? And more importantly, is that going to help that person feel safer?
Yep.
Be in danger with me?
Yeah.
Because if we come back to our conversation about where we've been for our first 2 sessions, we talked about the why, the what, and the how. In the context for me is, if I want, my why is to become more influential as a communicator.
Correct. Yep.
My what is I need to be able to build rapport, but my how is going to be different, because there are 4 primary styles of human behavior, and my how's going to change. So if I got a slow-paced emotional, I'm going to be different with a fast-paced rational. So I have to be able to modify my behavior if I'm seriously going to be able to do it. That's an example of how we take some of that content from our earlier courses and lock it into this bit.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the model fits in, and we do have to adapt and change constantly to be able to work with different people.
Yeah,
and it changes literally from minute to minute. If you're thinking about that in a customer context, so let's say you're in a retail environment and you're dealing with one customer who's fast-paced. You do the transaction, you deal with it, or they leave, whatever it is. And then the next person that walks through the door 30 seconds later is a slow person, and you're still up to the speed of the previous customer.
Yeah.
You're basically shot from the start. It's not that you won't do the business. It'll just be clunky and really unpleasant for everyone involved. What's the point of that?
Yeah. And so this becomes that really interesting conversation, Marty, about where we go right back to where we saw it. We can run our life on unconscious and automatic, or we can become conscious and deliberate. And part of this conversation is to swim back and go, every bit of research I've got would tell me now, when we're talking about becoming more influential with people, conscious and deliberate.
Yeah.
Now, some people go, that takes time. Yep. But it has its swings and shifts. We know that people who are like you will like you. They like you, listen to you. They'll be more influenced by you. In terms of selling, we know that the people who are unbelievably good at being influential sell at a higher level than anyone else.
Yeah.
Better closing ratios, better profitability, better customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
So if we're going to appeal to people who are in a sales environment today, want to increase your profit, want to increase your sales ratios, want to increase your customer satisfaction, become more influential.
Yeah. Okay. So let's maybe talk about the model a little bit. And what I'm actually thinking is, for those that are actually watching on YouTube or on the website, I might actually share my screen and draw it, so that way I've got an idea. But what we'll also do is we will put it up on the website, the model, so that way people can use that as a worksheet.
Beautiful.
Without a problem. So I'll just go ahead and do that. So if you just want to fill in the airtime, mate, while I get this sorted.
All right, so I sing and dance for a little while.
yeah, exactly. Especially singing, mate. Especially singing.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that for the people. I think that would be a bad thing for us.
Exactly. Okay, so it's a relatively simple model. I think this is what I love about it is you don't have to do a psychometric test to be able to understand where someone sits in this model or what their profile will be. So if you look at DISC, for example, that requires quite an extensive survey to go through, emotional intelligence. All those psychometric tests are quite intensive and lengthy, and they give you great detail and information. Absolutely. I know mine is spot on, but this one is pretty simple, and it essentially just starts with 4 quadrants.
Yep.
Excuse my very, very poor drawing. Now, if you look at
Picasso, would be proud of you, bud.
Yeah, thanks, mate. If we look at the the vertical up top, we're talking fast, and therefore also loud. Correct?
Yeah.
And then down the bottom, we've got slow and quiet. So like you mentioned before, when you walk into a room or you walk into that room back in the day and you were boisterous and loud and fast because your natural pace is up there on the top.
Correct.
So it may sit, let me just change colors here. You may sit somewhere like here. I'll put an S for Stu, something like that, because you're maybe not super fast, but you're definitely up towards the faster. You're away from this center goal right here.
Correct.
And then what we have on the other side is we have, we have rational and task orientated. Yep. On this side, we have emotional and people.
Yeah.
So we can see how that sits if we're going to put people into a certain quadrant. Now, you mentioned that you were fast, and now do you think that you are more emotional or rational?
Just before we do that, Marty, I might just touch a little bit harder on the. So some people go, what's the measurement of fast? There are 3 key critical measurements of fast.
Okay.
The speed in which people speak, the speed in which people move, and the speed in which people appear to think.
Okay.
And so if we give that to the pace of the process, so the people who talk fast, we know they're going to throw 100 words at you as fast as possible. The people who talk slow are going to be a bit more thorough in their process.
Yeah.
The people who think fast, they answer the question for you before you're finished. They answer your questions for you before you ask. They do all those sorts of things. The people who are slow are more thoughtful. So you ask them a question and they stop. Now, not better, different.
Yep.
And so, and from my point of view, when I was given the simplicity of this model, it made it so easy for me to be able to people read. Yeah, it takes practice. All good things take practice, but it's dead easy. Most people will go, yep, they're fast or they're slow by those significant measurements.
Yeah. I mean, someone walks into your place of business, the speed they walk at is pretty clearly defined.
Yeah.
I am fast paced also. I remember back in the day in my younger years, I used to call it no purpose walking. and not understanding the profiles and all that like I do now, they were just slow paced. Whereas I'm fast paced. I'm like, that person is walking around with no purpose. That makes no sense to me. So now that I know some things, I certainly don't prejudge people on how they walk around. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. And like you said, then slower people are going to be more quiet, more reserved, possibly.
Yeah, but the key one for me is that their movement is more methodical and they are thoughtful. So the people who are fast-paced have a tendency towards action, and the people who are slow-paced have a tendency towards thoughtfulness. Not right, not wrong, just different.
Yep.
And so if I want to, for you and me, because we're not twins, but we're pretty close if I remember our profiles, Marty.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I meet someone who's slow-paced, it would be a really good idea if I slow down. Yep. It would be a really good idea when they ask me a question to stop my mouth from opening and stuff coming out, because I can answer questions quickly. It's not going to help them feel comfortable. The more like them I am, the more they're going to listen to me. So my influence comes from me changing me. I don't need to change 5 things about me, but I can change 1 or 2. And that's the goal of the conversation. Change 1 or 2, not 5 or 10.
Yeah, exactly. And And again, we're the ones trying to be influential. So it's about, like you said, us adapting and us matching the person that we are communicating with.
Yes.
So again, going sort of back to that quadrant. So what we're looking, the top left, we are looking at a fast, rational. So they are inclined to be more fast in their pace, in the way they speak, the way they think, and the way they move. And their thought process is going to be task orientated. So they're going to be the fast, rational type.
Yes. And so some people will meet these guys and go, they don't really care about me. Probably. So they're about results. They're about outcome. They're driven to have things done as quickly as possible. Relationships and people are roadblocks. Let's keep moving along.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. So then in the top right-hand quadrant, we're still in the fast, obviously, for the top end, but we are fast emotionals. And you and I both live in both of these, I think. I was probably more naturally fast emotional as I've gone through my career. Professionally, I've certainly moved to the fast rational side, and I can be rational very, very quickly, which a few of my ex-staff would probably understand that and be able to explain that a whole lot better than anyone. But the emotional is the relationship. They love to have that connection with people. They want to have those conversations. They want to be near people, talking about them, generally talking about themselves more than talking about the other person. But it works really well. That's why two fast emotionals in the same room, you can't get a word in, because they're typically either talking about themselves and then they stop talking about themselves and they turn around to the person and say, now I want you to talk about me too.
There you go. Yeah. I love that. I love that statement. When I stop talking about me, I'd love you to start talking about me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a fantastic one.
But they can be a lot of fun. So then moving on from those guys down to the bottom right, we obviously move into the slow side of things. But we're still in the emotional side. So we're into the slow emotional quadrant. These guys and girls are great. So they definitely move a little bit slower, but they really genuinely care.
Yeah.
It's really important to
good, these people.
The relationship. So they will do anything for you. They will help you. They will support you along your journey, whatever it is you're trying to do. Even if you're a salesperson trying to sell them something, they'll still give you every opportunity, because the relationship is the number one thing for them.
Yeah. But the other thing, and so where these guys, so if a fast-paced rational meets these guys, they're in trouble, because the fast-paced rationals, I've got a task to do. I've got to get something done really quickly. This guy's going, yeah, so how's your dog? And how you been? How the family going? And the disconnection is almost palpable. I've been charged. I remember back in my days, I had a customer who was a slow-paced emotional, and I was doing the fast-paced rational bit. And the feedback I got from that customer was a little soul-destroying. I won't use the words on camera that he called me, but arsehole was one of them.
So he knew you well then.
Better than I thought. But it's this thing about, validate the relationship, and then we can talk later. So relationship first, process second. And that's true for both of the guys on the right-hand side, where on the left-hand side we go task first, maybe relationship second. And if we get, they're simple examples of the process, Marty. We got one more to go,
exactly.
Right?
So then obviously moving to the left and over onto the rational side and the bottom left-hand side, so specifically we're talking about slow rationals. Again, these are the people that walk around with a list, with a clipboard, with a structured process on how they're going to go about their business. If I'm in my fast emotional side and I'm dealing with a slow rational, it can be a very, very tedious experience. Like you said, a fast rational versus a slow emotional, task orientated, results orientated, and the slow emotional just wants to have a relationship. It's comical to watch at times, but it can be disastrous for everyone, because they're all wasting energy trying to get to the result that they want. But what they don't understand is that result can be relatively different.
Yes. Well done.
That's probably
the other thing about the slow-paced rationals, which is really valuable, is that they are absolutely thorough, high into detail. And so when you give me information, please make sure it's correct. But don't tell it to me, show it to me in written format. Because if you don't give me, If you don't give me written information, people trusting is not one of my favorite bits as a slow rational, but data, I trust data. So it's about understanding that if that's what they want, that's what they get.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that comes down to their unconscious driver, right? So
yeah,
it's slow rational is really about being right.
Correct.
That's important to them. Fast rational is about the result.
Correct.
They don't want the relationship with you. They just want the result that's right for them. Fast emotional is about recognition. They want recognition for the work they do. They want recognition of the relationship and the effort they're putting in. And then the slow emotional is about the relationship, like we mentioned. So I know my screen's getting a little bit messy here, but again, what we'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen there. But what we'll do is we'll put that model up on the website, and I think the idea there will be you really need to understand what your profile is.
Yeah,
where you think you sit.
And I think there's a couple of things we can talk to the people who are watching or listening to the program to do today. When they see the model, one of the things that I'm going to suggest for them to do is they start at that middle dot, and the first thing they do is they go up or down. Am I faster or slower than most people? So that'll be your decision. So faster or slower, don't mind which way you go. And then if we go rational or people, so would I prefer to do research or would I prefer to talk to people in my modeling? So if I wanted to get information, do I go and talk to people or do I go and read a book or go onto the internet? So that's an example. And so you just put a dot. And the thing I would suggest for people, we've got a couple of choices. They can come and talk to us in some way, and we can talk to them about doing some profiling for them if they want.
Absolutely.
Or the other thing they could do is go and show the model to someone else and 3 people that they know and go, where do you think I fit? That's always a fun thing to do. The conversation, though, what I'll always try and do with people is that choose 3 people in the same environment, because we do have environmental learning, environmental situations. And so how I act and behave at work could be different to how I act at home or with my mates. So do it situationally, but go and have a chat to 3 people and go, where do you think I am on this? If you're looking for some feedback.
Yeah, and then that comes down to, like we always talk about, the awareness. So where do I sit on that quadrant? When am I having success with let's say work colleagues that I'm working with? What am I doing? What are they doing? Are they the same as me, or am I adapting, or are they adapting possibly without you knowing it?
Yeah.
And if we're aware of it and we understand the model, which is, again, a simple model, and we'll happily share that if people want more information after this episode, is you then have a choice. It's up to you to go about being more influential in the work that you do, because you now understand a model that is extremely effective.
Yeah. But then we go that one step further. So we go, we're going to give awareness, then we have choice, then we have to drop that wonderful R word called repetition.
Repetition. Yep.
Yeah, because, we've talked about this a lot, but I'm not a fan that we practice on customers.
No.
Because
one of your favorite sayings is idiots practice on customers.
Yeah, because it costs you money. Practice on your mates, practice on your buddies, practice on your dog or your cat. I don't care who it is, but practice on someone. But, it really becomes important is if you want to slow down or speed up or become more rational, look at the model, practice before you try with customers, because you get it wrong with customers or you get it wrong with people in influence, not a good look. So, it's a thought provoker for these guys. And, one of the activities I think is a worthwhile one to talk about. I don't know if you want to talk about it now, Marty, but, like when I do this kind of work with people and I ask them to think about who would you like to be influential with? And I say to people, think of 2 people, no more than 3, in your current environment that you want to become influential with. I'm not going to ask you why. So think about 2 or 3 people you want to become more influential with. Question number 1, self-awareness question. Where do you sit on the behavioral model? And then question number 2, where does the person sit on the behavioral model? And then start looking at the differences. And then the simple question then becomes, what's 1 or 2 things you could change, adapt, or move on that would allow you to become more influential with that other person?
Yep. And then, like we always say, practice makes permanent.
Yeah.
So the more you practice it, the more it works, the more natural it is. And all of a sudden you'll be doing it in your subconscious, and you'll be naturally more influential in the things that you're doing and what you're trying to achieve in your everyday.
Yeah. And then we go back to what we talked about in goal setting. If one of our goals is to become more influential, then we can start getting things like feedback. I remember talking to someone who was a coach of mine and saying, I wanted to increase my influence. And he goes, well, that'd be good if you stop being an asshole. That word's been a very common one for me in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't understand it. But it was, the conversation, every time I had that conversation and got feedback, people would say to me, Stuart, you need to slow down. Stuart, you need to talk less, ask more.
Yeah.
So, 2 to 3 years into my career that I've had for the last 24 years or something at the moment, I changed my modeling because I got all this feedback that said if I wanted to continue growing my influence in the job I did, that I had to change.
Yep.
The goal was to become more influential. The structure was to become better at building rapport. And then the social adaptation piece comes into play.
Yeah.
So why I'm really passionate about this is something I've been practicing for a long, long time. And the good news is I'm pretty good at it, I reckon. The bad news is I've still got a lot to learn, as we all do, because every day I get a different audience. Every day I get a different community of people to talk to. Every day I have to be aware of what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, you're fortunate to have done this for a long time and understand it, but it does have to be a deliberate practice. You've got to go in there deliberately going, okay, this is how I'm going to act and behave, and this is what I'm going to do, and these are the things I'm going to think about. So brilliant, Stu. It's been awesome.
Yeah, cool.
So again, everyone, thanks very much for tuning in. We appreciate your support, and we hope we're helping you succeed in your world. So on our website, stuandmarty.com, or where you listen to your podcast, we'll have links for worksheets from this episode, some of the models that we talked about, and how you can use those to enhance what you're currently doing and maybe start to have more influence. You can also subscribe to the podcast there. A share and some comments would also be great. Some feedback we always welcome, so that we know if we're heading in the right direction and talk about the things we'd like to talk about. Also, that said, thinking about today's episode specifically, if you want to have a chat about your profile and how you can grow your influence, or interested in working with Stu or I, just get in touch through stuandmarty.com or our facebook.com/Stu and Marty. And also remember to follow the page while you're there, so that way you can see what we're up to. So look, we really appreciate all of you. We look forward to the next episode. The topic is a secret, or we just haven't decided yet. You can do
or both. Can we do both?
Exactly. But again, thanks, Stu, mate. Your insight's been invaluable, and we really appreciate your experience and your knowledge in this area. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Marty. Yeah, you too, bud. We're getting good at this, I reckon. Yeah. Just ask us.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep telling people. That's our fast emotional, no problems at all. So easy. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode.